Good morning, everyone. Happy Sabbath, Feliz Sabado, Shabbat Shalom. It's like there's an echo in here. This is great. It's a cavern. All right, before we get started, let's go ahead and start with a blessing. Blessed are you, Yehovah our God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us with his commandments and has commanded us to engross ourselves in the words of Torah. Please, Yehovah our God, sweeten the words of Torah in our mouth and in the mouth of your people, the family of Israel. May we and our offspring and the offspring of your people, the house of Israel, all of us, know your name and study your Torah for its own sake. Blessed are you, Yehovah, who teaches Torah to his people Israel. All right, we are going to start off this morning by playing the Tony Robinson game, which is what I've come to call it, otherwise known as Did You Study Your Torah portion? I'm going to go ahead and give you a term or a word out of this portion, and we'll see who can find where it's from first. The first term is spirit of wisdom. And while we wait, the Torah portion today is Exodus 27:20 through 30:10. Right, and we're looking for spirit of wisdom. Yes. 28:3, that is correct. Yeah. Would you like to read it, Christine? All right.
And you speak to the wise of heart, whom I have filled with the spirit of wisdom, and they shall make the garments of Aaron to set him apart for him and to serve as a priest to me.
Excellent. So the people that made the garments were filled with the spirit of wisdom. All right, the next one is 6, the number 6. Ava?
It's 28:10.
That is correct.
It's talking about I'm going to read 9 and 10 because 10 doesn't make sense without it. Then you shall take 2 onyx stones and engrave on them the names of the sons of Israel, 6 of their names on one stone and 6 names on the other stone, in order of their birth.
That is correct. All right. The next one is set apart or holy for Yehovah or for Adonai. Set apart for Adonai. All right, Michael?
28 verse 36.
Yes.
And you shall make a plate of clean gold and engrave on it, and like the engraving of a signet, set apartness to Yahweh.
That is correct. All right. The next one is wash them with water. Oh, Michael's got that one too. 2 in a row.
That is 29 verse 4.
It is.
And then you shall bring Aaron and his sons to the door of the tent of the appointment and wash them with water.
Excellent. And the last one for this morning is pleasing aroma. Oh, over here.
Twenty-nine 18 Then you are to offer the whole ram up in smoke on the altar. It is a burnt offering to Adonai, a sweet aroma, an offering made by fire to Adonai.
Excellent. Thank you, Gabe. Yep, and 25 as well. It's in multiple places. So either one would work. We're not keeping score, though. Not this time. All right, the title for the Torah portion this morning is T-tzaveh. So if I can get a volunteer to read the first section, it's Exodus 27, verse 20 through 28:12. And right, you can get the next one, Johnny.
Starting from verse 20. Also, you are to command Bnei Israel that they are to bring to you pure olive oil, beaten for the light, to cause a lamp to burn continually, in the tent of meeting outside the curtain, which is before the testimony. Aaron and his sons will set it in order to burn from evening to morning before Adonai. It will be a statute forever throughout their generations on behalf of Bnei Israel. Bring your brother Aaron near with his technical difficulties. Sons from among Bnei Israel, so that they may minister to me as Kohanim. Aaron and his sons, Nadab and Abihu, Eleazar and Ithamar, you are to make the holy garments for your brother Aaron, for splendor and for beauty. You are to speak to all who are skilled, whom I have filled with the spirit of artistry, to make Aaron's garments for consecrating him, so that he may minister to me as a Kohen. These are the garments that they are to make: a breastplate, an ephod, a robe, a tunic, a checkered work, a turban, and a sash. They are to make the holy garments for your brother Aaron and his sons, so that he may minister to me as a Kohen. They are to use the gold, blue, purple, and scarlet, and fine linen. They are to make the ephod of gold, blue, purple, scarlet, and finely twisted linen, the work of the skillful craftsman. It is to have 2 shoulder pieces stitched to the 2 ends, so that it may be joined together. The skillfully woven band which is upon it, with which it is to be bound, it is to be made like the design, and from the same piece of gold, blue, purple, and scarlet, and finely twisted linen. You are to take 2 onyx stones and engrave on them the names of Bnei Israel, 6 of their names on one stone, and the other names on the remaining 6 on the other stone, in the order of their birth. With the work of a gem cutter engraving a seal, etch the 2 stones, in order of the names of Bnei Israel. Make them enclosed in settings of gold. Fasten the 2 stones upon the shoulder piece of the ephod to be a memorial for Bnei Israel. So Aaron is to bear their names before Adonai on his 2 shoulders as a reminder. It was to verse 12, right?
That's correct, through verse 12.
Okay.
All right. Does anyone have any comments on this section? I found it interesting that God was commanding fancy clothes for the priests. He wanted his priests to look good, to be dressed well. The ephod, for example, in the Ugaritic text, there's references to ephods in the Canaanite countries around them, where an ephod was a fancy or an expensive robe that was worn by the upper class people, the rich people, basically. And it eventually fell out of style for the rich people, but it was so fancy that it was kept by a lot of the religious people in a lot of the cultures back then. So. Anyone else have anything?
So I had this thought last week with all the tents that they were moving out, and these directives are you will and you shall wear. And anybody know how long it took to make these articles of tent coverings and priestly garbs? This is just a curious thought of mine.
I know if I were making them, it would take a really long time.
I know. That's what I'm thinking.
And they wouldn't look that good, that's right.
But this is stuff that they had to have taken from the Egyptians, the spoil and the plunder, the purple and blue thread and material, because they didn't,
The material for sure, but
Yeah.
there's also, in along with all of the listings of things to make, it talks about there being skilled craftsmen, people that excel at those jobs. So there wasn't a lack of talent in Israel that was God-given.
yeah.
Gabe?
Just say specifically, it's to those skilled craftsmen who have been filled with the spirit of artistry, which doesn't just seem to be those who are good at art, but who have been filled with the spirit of artistry, or have been blessed with that, is what I think the scripture is reflecting.
Absolutely. Valerie?
I thought it was really interesting that the Torah portion started with talking about the lampstand, but most of it is about the garments of the priesthood and consecrating the priest. So why start it with that little bit about the lampstand? Why not put that with last week? Any ideas?
That's a good question, and I don't claim to have any answers, but I know the making of the oil, I was reading just last night that the Hebrew word that they used for making that oil was the purest kind of oil, the best oil possible, and that goes in line with the clothes. The clothes were the best clothes that they could make. All of it was done to be the best.
Yeah, I was just looking at that. That is a good question with the why put it here and not in last week's portion. I think whenever we have an anomaly like that, it points to how important that section of this portion is, because that's the lighting of the menorah. So that, I mean, you can dive deep into that. So I think that should be something we should focus on and look more into, why it's put there instead of like in the previous chapters.
Anybody else? All right, Johnny graciously offered to read section number 2. That's Exodus 28, verses 13 through 30. I didn't forget.
13 through 30. Correct?
Yes, that's correct.
You are to make filigree settings of gold and 2 braided chains of pure gold like a cord, and attach the chains to the settings. You are to make a breastpiece for use in making decisions, the work of an artistic designer. You are to make it in the same fashion as the ephod. You are to make it of gold, blue, purple, scarlet, and fine twisted linen. It is to be square when doubled, 9 inches long and 9 inches wide. You are to set it in a setting for stones, 4 rows of stones, a row with a ruby, a topaz, and a beryl, the first row, and the second row a turquoise, a sapphire, and an emerald, and the third row a jacinth, an agate, and an amethyst, and the fourth row a chrysolite, an onyx, and a jasper. They are to be enclosed in gold in their filigree settings. The stones are to be for the names of the sons of Israel, 12, according to the number of their names. Each name, according to the 12 tribes, is to be like the engravings of a seal. You are to make for the breastpiece braided chains like cords of pure gold. And you are to make for the breastpiece 2 gold rings and attach the 2 rings to the upper 2 ends of the breastpiece. You are to attach the 2 gold chains to the 2 rings at the ends of the breastpiece. The other 2 ends of the 2 chains you will attach to the 2 settings and then attach them to the shoulder pieces of the ephod at the front of it. You are to make 2 rings of gold and put them on the other 2 ends of the breastpiece. On its edge, that is on the inner side of the ephod. You are to make 2 more gold rings and attach them to the bottom of the 2 shoulder pieces on the front of the ephod, close to the juncture above the waistband of the ephod. They are to tie the breastpiece by its rings to the rings of the ephod by blue cord, so that it may be above the waistband of the ephod, and so that the breastpiece will not be loose from the ephod. Aaron will bear the names of the sons of Israel in the breastpiece of decision over his heart when he goes into the holy place for a memorial before the Lord continually. You are to put the Urim and the Thummim into the breastpiece of decision, and they are to be over Aaron's heart when he goes in before the Lord. Aaron is to bear the decisions of the Israelites over his heart before Jehovah continually.
All right. Does anyone have any comments on this section? I was noticing that in the making of the clothes, all of the colors of royalty, all the colors that show power and authority were woven in. Yeah, Lori?
So I'm sitting here reading this with it over the heart, and I love that. Usually when we're making decisions, we're doing it, pulling it from our logic, the part of our brain. But the heart, a lot of people think that's exactly where the spirit lives, but there is a part of the spirit that lives there. But that's the part of the spirit that's connected to the Holy Spirit, as 1 Corinthians, I think it's 6:17, that we are united with the Spirit. So that's where the judgment's coming in from. It's directly connected to the Holy Spirit that's making those from our heart decisions. I like that.
I also think back in those days, most cultures, I think all the way up through up to Greek times or even past that, the heart was considered the seat of intellect, the place where thought, not just emotion, came from. Anybody else have anything? Yes.
An observation. It's always puzzled me how they could engrave the names of the tribes on a gemstone, because I'm not picturing really big stones. That's just been a puzzle to me.
That makes two of us.
Thank you.
Yes. Over here.
If we notice verse 15 that starts out this section, the breastplate was for judging. So it's not necessarily decision-making that we're talking about, it's judgments.
Yes. I liked how that's called the breastplate of judgment. And the Urim and the Thummim, they both start with, the Urim starts with Aleph and the Thummim starts with Tav, so they're like the beginning and the end, and they're definitely how God showed them the decisions to make judgment from. So it wasn't like, an eeny, meeny, miny, mo, what can I do here? But it was definitely for God's judgments. I think a good example of that comes from, I have it noted down here in 1 Samuel 14:41. It reads, it gives a good example of using the Urim and the Thummim. King Saul is saying, "Why have you not responded to your servant today? If this inquiry was due to my son Jonathan or to me, O Yehovah God of Israel, show Urim. But if you say that it was due to your people Israel, show Thummim." So he was asking for a judgment and asking God to show one or show the other. And I think that might be the last time that the Urim and the Thummim are mentioned in the Bible.
Since the last visit of Rico, I've been trying to study the Near Eastern, Mesopotamia and Egypt, like the background of their religions in line. And almost every one of these items tie into other religions, the Mesopotamia and Egypt. And so the question I have is why he was so careful to make sure we don't worship him like they do, but yet almost everything of this portion relates to some other way that they were. And so curious as to if anybody has any thoughts on to why this seems to be similar and there are other things that are not, or he doesn't allow.
I've had that same question a lot, and while I don't know the answer, how I always think of that is his worship that he handed down to the children of Israel is patterned after how he originally did it in heaven, how it's God's original way of worship. And I chalk up any similarities to other religions as cheap copies.
And I think when you're talking about those things, he always uses representation to show us humanity, like I said, copies of, but he always adds, but worship the creator, not the created. And so he's really careful to always say, like, don't worship the menorah, this is what it represents. Or don't worship, this altar or the basin, all the little pieces. Worship me, and I will show you through these things my pattern. So
Absolutely. The power and the holiness isn't with the things point to the power and holiness. Stevie?
Thank you. I don't quite know how to say this, but I think we should reflect on it. All my life, I've gone to various worship services. Congregation I was raised in, many denominations. I served as a Army chaplain. I associated with many other different chaplains, supported each other because we had a diverse congregation, right? But we had one mission, which was to either to perform or provide religious support to soldiers. And if we couldn't do it because there were denominational differences, then we were to come as close as we could to help them. But the whole thing was we couldn't go against our own conscience. So it was a struggle. It was nothing was easy. Yet, in another sense, if we couldn't do something, we were obligated to find someone who could. And for some, it was like if it was a Catholic soldier, then and he wanted to make confession to a priest, well, obviously I couldn't meet that religious need of his, but I would leave no stone unturned in trying to accommodate their desires. And that was part of our rationale for getting to know each other, to work with each other, to show some sort of unity together. And even with the Jewish rabbis, and we had the same God. So that was still a driving force with that. So I've been reflecting on that in recent years. The synagogue service, why do the Jews do it the way they do? Why do they have a specific pattern that they follow? And we actually are realizing this through our parshas and our Torah portions, and we're going to come across this because they follow the pattern of worship inaugurated in the tabernacle and continued in the temple. Very few, if any, Christian congregations follow such a pattern. So I think it's worth us reflecting on.
I would agree. It's always worth reflecting on ways that we can get closer to our Creator, for sure. Right. Anyone else? All right, can I get a volunteer to read the next section? It is chapter 28, verses 31 to 43.
Verse 31 through 43. Chapter 28. And ye shall make the robe of the shoulder garment garment olive blue, and the opening of his head shall be in the middle of it, and a woven binding all around its opening, like the opening in a scaled armor, so that does not tear. And on its hem you shall make a pomegranates of blue and purple and scarlet material, all around its hem, and bells of gold between them all around, a gold bell and a pomegranate, a golden bell and a pomegranate, and on the hem of the robe all around. And it shall be upon Aaron to attend it, and it shall be heard when he goes into a set apart place before Yahweh, and when he comes out, so he does not die. And you shall make a plate of green gold, engrave it on it like the engraving of a signet, a set apartness to Yahweh. And you shall put it on a blue cord, and it shall be on the turban, and it is to be on the front of the turban, and it shall be on the forehead of Aaron, and Aaron shall bear the guilt of the set-apart gifts, which the children of Israel set apart in all their set-apart gifts. And it shall always be on his forehead for the acceptance for them before Yahweh. And you shall weave the long shirt of fine linen, and shall make the turban of fine linen, and you shall make the girdle of the woven work, and make long shirts for Aaron's sons, and you shall make girdles for them, and you shall make turbans for them, and for the esteem and comeliness. And you shall put them on Aaron and your brother, and on his sons with him, and you shall anoint them, and shall ordain them, and you shall set them apart, and they shall serve as priests to me. And make them linen trousers for them, to cover their nakedness, reaching from the waist to the thighs. And they shall be on Aaron and on his son, and they come into the tent of appointment. And when they come near the slaughter place to attend in the set apart place, so that they do not bear crookedness and die, a law forever to him and to his seed after him.
All right, are there any comments on this section? I know at the end it says that they made linen shorts for the priests, and one of the translations I was reading called them breeches, and I thought that was a little bit amusing. But also at the same point, it's again a contrast to, while the pagan religions had priests and priestesses serving, it's a contrast in how they served. The priests and priestesses for most pagan religions served very immodestly. And Yahweh wanted to make sure that his priests were fully clothed, that they were modest, and that the focus was on
how we are to be perfect, just as he was perfect in this time of just as he was perfect in this time of consecration before Passover and the whole thing. We are to be priests of our own temples and judge ourselves before that time. And just the whole thing I just think is just beautiful. So that's all.
Very much, yes. Yeah, over here, Bill.
Something that I never really noticed before while reading this was verse 38, and there it says, over Aaron's forehead, where it talks about the thing around his head, and it says, because Aaron bears the guilt for any errors committed by the people of Israel in consecrating their holy gifts. I just thought that was really interesting. I've never noticed that.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, I think he had a lot on his shoulders, literally and figuratively. Yeah, Chad?
Yeah, I love what she was saying about the high priesthood. Just going through the whole tabernacle, this reminds me of the people as well. Like, always comes back to Yeshua. Like Moses, when Yeshua came, he was like Moses as a prophet. And then now he's reigning as high priest. Like she was saying, we are the high priest of our temple. And then, like if you read all through Hebrews, it ties to this section about the priesthood and what that means for our walk today. And then Joshua, we know he is a representation of Yeshua and his kingship when he returns. So it's just a beautiful pattern of how Yeshua is always represented throughout this section. And even when Yeshua was crucified, the veil was torn. So like Stevie was saying, if you went into the Holy of Holies, you would die. So when Yeshua was crucified, that veil was torn, and that gives us access to the tabernacle, and that we're not going to die because of his blood and his resurrection and all the things that he did for us. So it's just a beautiful representation of what can happen now when we tap into that power inside of us, the Holy Spirit, because we have full access to be in the dwelling of Yahweh without the fear of death.
Yes, I agree. It's a very beautiful representation, and I know growing up reading all these stories in the Old Testament and stuff, it wasn't until Valerie and I came to Torah that we started to see the patterns and all of the things pointing, starting from the Old Testament to Yeshua and to what he's done for us. And it's just amazing making more and more and more of those connections. Okay. Lori?
So the verse that Bill just brought up about Aaron bearing the guilt for any errors, I'm sitting here thinking as the father of the two men that were killed because they erred grievously. So he's got a double whammy there. Like, did I mess up in not teaching them correctly? Or, that's kind of hard to tease out, I think, as a parent and a priest. It's very challenging. Just an observation.
Yeah. Michael?
Thank you, Brian. I just thought it was interesting. Where else do you see there was an anointment that was put on the forehead across? You see this in the priestly, but you see it also in Revelation.
It's also in Exodus 13, I believe. It's tied to unleavened bread, I believe.
Okay. All right. Anyone else? All right. I need a volunteer to read the next section. The fourth reading is Exodus 29, verses 1 through 18.
This is what you are to do to make them holy, to do the work of the priests to me. Take 1 young ox and 2 male sheep, without any mark on them. The unleavened and unleavened bread and unleavened cakes mixed with oil, then thin unleavened cakes on which oil has been put, made of the best bread meal. Put these in the baskets and take them with the ox and 2 sheep. Let Aaron and his sons come to the door of the tent of meeting, and there let them be washed in water. Take the robes and put the coat and the dress on, and the ephod and the priest's bag on Aaron. Put the band on the needlework around him. Then let the headdress be placed on his head and the holy crown on his headdress. Then take the oil and put on his head, and take his sons and put their robes on them. Put the linen bands around Aaron and his sons, then take the headdress and the headdress on them to make them priests by my order forever. So you are to make Aaron and his sons holy to me. Then let the ox be taken in front of the tent of meeting, and let Aaron and his sons put their hands on its head. And you are to put the ox to death before the Lord at the door of the tent of meeting. Then take some of the blood of the ox and put it on the horns of the altar with your finger, draining all the rest of the blood at the base of the altar. Then take all the fat covering inside of the ox, and the fat joining the liver of 2 kidneys with the fat around them. Then let them be burned on the altar. But the flesh of the ox and its skin and its waist part is to be burned outside the circle tent, for it's a sin offering. Then take one of the sheep and let Aaron and his sons put their hands on its head. Then let it be put to death, so that the sides of the altar will be marked with its blood. Then the sheep is to be cut into its parts, and after washing its legs and its inside parts, you are to put them with the parts and its head, and let them be burned as the altar as a burnt offering to the Lord, a sweet smell and offering made by the fire to the Lord.
Excellent, thank you. Do we have any comments on that section? Yeah, Mike?
So I made mention in this parsha that no leavening was supposed to be offered with the offerings there, and that comes from Leviticus 2:11, where it says, "No meat offering which ye shall bring unto Yahweh shall be made with leaven, for ye shall burn no leaven nor honey in any offering made by fire." So, so we notice that the daily offerings in the temple, the morning and in the afternoon, evening, those offerings had to be done on the altar with unleavened bread. And so we're coming up on Passover season. And so the reason that the Passover lamb was supposed to be eaten with unleavened bread because it was an offering, okay? And and that's the reason why Passover required unleavened bread. And then you have the 7 days of unleavened bread. So just to try to clarify, it's not 8 days of unleavened bread, it's 7 days, but offerings made by fire to Yahweh were always to be done with no leaven and no honey.
Yes, over here.
Some of us are fasting periodically in the church, and Liana shared that typically when you fast, possibly you might lose weight. And that fat that you're burning is a sweet-smelling savor to the Lord. And so I was just looking at this, and it says to throw the fat on the altar and put it in the smoke, and that's the part that is sweet smelling to him. He loves it. I don't know why. He can have all the fat on me he wants. But anyway, I mean, it's exciting. It just ties right back to temple service.
Piggybacking on what you said, it made me think of the prayers of the saints are incense that are constantly going up. So tying a little bit more there is.
So a little trivia before we get to chapter 30. In chapter 28, 27, the end of 27, 28, well, actually in the previous Torah portion last week, it went through all the instruments that were in the tabernacle. But there was one left out, and it isn't mentioned until chapter 30. And so why is that? So that'll be something to think about when we get to chapter 30.
Here's something else to highlight is verse 13 and 14. And this has been a hot topic, or I shouldn't say a hot topic. It's been a topic that's been brought up, but it's why does it describe the fat that you're to burn? And it's also the fat that's what's known as the suet. The fat it's what covers the kidneys, the liver. That fat is not just a fat that you just find anywhere. It's a fat that's also known as, it's a covering over that organ. And that fat was, if you go into another chapter, it is a fat that it is said that you are to not eat of.
Would that be because it is designed to protect the organ that gives life?
I don't remember who was talking about it, but I love the part comparing the fat here with prayer and fasting. Like when we eat carbs and sugar in our bodies, it stores it as fat. And the non-believers in those times the fat is what's considered a delicacy. So by fasting, we know that we burn fat. We're giving that to Yahweh because that's the choice part of what he wants. He wants us to sacrifice. And when we pray and fast, that's how we relinquish the authority that our flesh has, and we give it back to the Spirit, was how Yahweh wants us to walk and be like Yeshua. So that was really good. Whoever said that, thank you.
Anyone else? On a little bit different note with that text, going back to the patterns and how everything points up to Yeshua, I found it interesting how Moses washed Aaron and his sons like Yeshua washed the feet of his disciples, and there were sacrifices made for Aaron and his sons for substitution for their sins, like the sacrifice that Yeshua made for us. So I found that interesting as well. Do we have a volunteer to read the next section, Exodus 29, verses 19 through 37? Stevie?
Take the other ram. Aaron and his sons are to lay their hands on the ram's head, and you are to slaughter the ram. Take some of its blood and put it on the lobe of Aaron's right ear, on the lobes of his sons' right ears, on the thumbs of their right hands, and on the big toes of their right feet. Take the rest of the blood and splash it on all sides of the altar. Then take some of the blood that is on the altar and some of the anointing oil and sprinkle it on Aaron and his clothing and on his sons and the clothing of his sons with him, so that he and his clothing will be consecrated, and with him his sons and his son's clothing. Also take the fat from the ram, the fat tail, the fat that covers the inner organs, the 2 kidneys, the fat covering them, and the right thigh, for it is a ram of consecration, along with 1 loaf of bread, 1 cake of oiled bread, and 1 wafer from the basket of matzah, which is before Yehovah, and put it in the hands of Aaron and his sons. They are to wave them as a wave offering in the presence of Yehovah. Then take them back and burn them up in smoke on the altar, on top of the burnt offering, to be a pleasing aroma before Yehovah. It is an offering made to Yehovah by fire. Take the breast of the ram for Aaron's consecration and wave it as a wave offering before Yehovah. It will be your share. Consecrate the breast of the wave offering and the thigh of any contribution that has been waved and raised up, whether from the ram of consecration or from anything else meant for Aaron or his sons. This will belong to Aaron and his sons as their share perpetually, due from the people of Israel. It will be a contribution from the people of Israel from their peace offerings, their contribution to Yehovah. The holy garments of Aaron will be used by his sons after him. They will be anointed and consecrated in them. The son who becomes Kohen in his place, who comes into the tent of meeting to serve in the holy place, is to wear them for 7 days. Take the ram of consecration and boil its meat in a holy place. Aaron and his sons will eat the ram's meat and the bread in the basket at the entrance to the tent of meeting. They are to eat the things with which atonement was made for them, to inaugurate and consecrate them. No one else may eat this food, because it is holy. If any of the meat from the consecration or any of the bread remains until morning, burn up what remains. It is not to be eaten, because it is holy. Carry out all these orders I have given you concerning Aaron and his sons. You are to spend 7 days consecrating them. Each day offer a young bull as a sin offering, besides the other offerings of atonement. Offer the sin offering on the altar as your atonement for it. Then anoint it to consecrate it. 7 days you will make atonement on the altar and consecrate it. Thus the altar will be especially holy, and whatever touches the altar will become holy.
Thank you, Stevie. Do we have any comments on this section? I have a question. If blood was sprinkled on Aaron and his sons, on their clothing, and put on their ear and on their skin, doesn't that make them ritually impure?
Since I have this, it's blood. It is blood, but it's consecrated. It's holy. This whole process is extremely holy. And one of the amazing things is that this is also a purification, not just a consecration, because this is the same process that will be used for a leper when he or she is healed. And it would take place before they are welcomed back into the fold, where they had been unclean before. Now they are clean.
Anyone else? Yeah, Lori?
I have a thought that this is all for purification and consecration. But when Yeshua comes, it is the power of his blood and the death on the cross and resurrection that we as individuals now, as Christians now, can use that power of that blood. And so that's the lifeblood. And so I think it's just setting it all up from the very beginning of time till now.
I absolutely agree. Just like the priests became technically impure as they stood in the place of the Israelites, performing that sacrifice to ritually cleanse the camp of Israel. Yeshua did the same thing for us. He took on the unclean, the impureness, so that we could be clean and we could be pure. Absolutely. How much time do we have left? None. All right. Let's go ahead and bow our heads and close with a blessing. Blessed are you, Yehovah our God, King of the universe, who has given us a Torah of truth, implanting within us eternal life. Blessed are you, Yehovah our God, who gives the Torah. All right, thank you all very much for having so many comments and making this a good Torah portion.